the attorney for Zach Smith, Brad Koffel, joins us. And Brad, I know this has been a crazy time for you, and so we appreciate the time. I have to start by asking you this. What was your reaction to what you saw last night and the suspension of Urban Meyer?
Well, I think we're all in the same boat. No one really knew. I had strong feelings going into this that Urban did not deserve any discipline, and if they could just take one of Gene's fingers, they would just take that. But I think that you take the whole context of everything that OSU is being drugged through right now with the diving coach and the doctor allegations, and then this stuff, whether or not it was going to be too much for Gene Smith to survive. So I was surprised that Coach Meyer suffered the suspension that he did after reading the consolidation of tens of thousands of text messages and numerous witnesses and get all that summarized into a tidy 23-page report with choice editing. I'm not surprised at all. In fact, I'm kind of surprised he has a job after the report that's come out, because national media makes it sound like Urban Meyer was eating popcorn while Zach Smith was beating up Courtney Smith. And I'm not trying to make light of that. I'm just saying at a national, there's no one who's even looking at this from the fact pattern that every single domestic abuse allegation should be treated seriously. I believe law enforcement in Ohio does treat them seriously. They come in, they're trained to do their jobs, and family violence is very dangerous. And if there is evidence that one of the warring spouses, has violent tendencies, they're going to remove him. They can always remove him from the house and bring him back later. But Zach Smith never was even taken from his home, and I can't overstate that. There's some photos out there of redness, a bloody finger. Every single question, every single photo that the panel asked of Zach, he answered. Things came up during the course of the interview of Zach I didn't know the answers to. And I'm looking at Zach, and you never want to be a lawyer in the middle of something like this and not know the answer to the question. Mm-hmm. And I look over at Zach, and I'm like, okay, I'm glad he answered that way, which is the truth. And there's some context to a lot of these accusations. Cumulatively, Zach probably had to go. Cumulatively, looking at it now, I still disagree with Urban Meyer being suspended.
Visiting with Brad Koffel, Zach Smith's attorney. All right, you have some legal actions that are continuing to go on with the Zach Smith, Courtney Smith case. The criminal trespassing, for example. What is the status of that? What is the status of the protection order? And what's going to come out in court?
So those are two perfect examples where you can take things and put them in remove the context, and it sounds terrible. He's got a protection order against him and criminal trespass at her place. Take the criminal trespass first. We all know now that he was trying to drop his son off at her place, and the big issue is whether or not she can create this geofence around her property when there's no other court order in place, whether or not an ex-wife can just say, you're not allowed to come past that point. He dropped off his son, he never even got out of his truck, and he drove away. So, yeah, criminal trespass on the surface sounds bad. Put some context behind it. Really, that's what we're arguing about. And we're going to have a 2-day trial in October over this. And then the protection order came 2 days later after our pretrial. So this case was 60 days old. And then Courtney runs and gets an ex parte protection order. And in the protection order, there's no new allegations of any type of stalking, threats, or violence. And judges almost always grant those. So now you've got a protection order. You add those two together, and you have a strong narrative, courtesy of Brett McMurphy, that we got a rotten guy on OSU's athletic department staff, football staff.
What was your view of the report that came out on Friday, last Friday, from Brett McMurphy? And he included in some text messages from you. You have talked about potential legal action. Are you considering any legal action against Brett McMurphy?
Yes. We are. It's not my niche. We've been in contact with a couple different civil litigation law firms that are looking forward to having the opportunity to see if there is an action there. I'm not a First Amendment guy. It certainly seemed to me when Brett McMurphy was sending me text Friday afternoon with these pictures of things that were ordered on Zach's private Amazon account. How did you get these, Zach? Or how did you get these, Brett? And he wouldn't tell me, and I forwarded them to Zach, and Zach tells me exactly how he got them. And that is we know who hacked into his account. We know the date, time, we know the IP address, and we know where they were when they got in there. We know who it is, and that person is going to be cooperating with us on how on the authorized use of telecommunications equipment and computers. It's a felony. And I told Brett, you're in possession of felony of digital data that was procured as a result of a felony. And I don't know if it's legal or illegal for you to use it, but tread lightly. That was what I said. Tread lightly.
Brad, how are you counseling Zach now after all of this stuff has come out? And he obviously was pretty visible at one point. What's the next plan for Zach in terms of moving forward with his life?
We had a great conversation after court today. That's where I said, Zach, we're here on a status conference. We just set this thing up for a 2-day jury trial. What are we doing? What is this all about? I mean, it's this train doesn't seem to be slowing down. Is this in your best interest? Is this in the best interest of your children? And the answer to that is no. So it tends to, it looks to me, if I'm his advisor and his counselor, it makes sense. What can we do to reach across the aisle and get these two to put down their sabers and try to heal, if it's possible? Get into counseling, therapy, for the benefit of your kids. You guys can hate each other behind your backs, but man, those kids deserve a mom and a dad, and you've got to raise kids. You got to raise boys to know how to treat women. And I that's where I'm stuck on this. I think the truth's somewhere in the middle. I think Zach has done things he regrets, and I think Courtney Smith has done things to Zach that she regrets. I know she has. And I know Zach has. It's unfortunate that it's been aired out on the national media, and now it's resulted in Urban Smith being suspended, Gene Smith being suspended.
Yeah, Brad, I agree. It's terrible that this is being played out on the national stage. But I've got to ask about one of the text messages that was sent that Courtney, it seemed as though Courtney sent it to Zach. It outlined a trip that they took where she said Zach had choked her and was aggressive. And the responses were, I know, and yes. Can you give us any context behind those? And was that actually Zach?
It was Zach. It was their trip. And Courtney, as related to me, I wasn't there. I have not talked to Courtney. So I have Zach's position only. But and when I say what I'm about to say, couple it with what I've heard from family who know her, she was going haywire. And the option that he's used in the past to avoid her when things get ugly in that house is to leave the house. He can't. You can't just leave and go out somewhere in Mexico. The odds, if she were to call the police, which I think she'd done before, he could wind up in a Mexican jail. And I don't know how that looks. There are, and I do believe that he pushed her against a wall, told her to calm down, and eventually she did. And I think it left some marks. And that I have never put my hands on my wife. And I'm not condoning anyone put their hands on their spouses. But I believe that's what happened. Whether that is legal or illegal, moral or immoral, I think that's what happened.
Last thing, Brad Koffel, before we let you go. There's a lot of situations in the report that we've read that came out and led to Urban Meyer's suspension of Zach not telling Coach Meyer certain things and OVI, and I know that you had advised him the criminal trespassing to let Coach Meyer know about that. Was that Zach's biggest failing in this, in your mind, or what do you think was his biggest failing here?
I think if you're going through a tough time in life, and if I had an employee that was showing the red flags that Zach was showing, I would have done. I would. I think, like most of us, we'd reach out and say, "Hey, you're missing this." And Stan mentioned this earlier. You're missing this. You're doing this. What's going on? Try to get some help. I don't know that I would call my employee's wife and butt in, especially if I know that law enforcement's involved in that. Especially if I know that my superiors may be doing that. I don't know that I would pick up, even if I knew her better than. I don't even know if Urban Meyer knew Courtney at all, other than a couple of conversations.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I'd pick up the phone and call her, but I would certainly tell my client, "You need to get some help." And I've told Zach that today. I said, "Buddy, you got to get some help. This is piling on. This is so bad for you. We got to get you some help." And I worry about Zach. He's got a family that loves him. He is, regardless of what everyone else says, he is a good dude who's absolutely been kicked up one side and down the other. Some of it probably deserved because of some stupid things that he did during a separation, but not everything that he's been accused of doing did he do.
All right, Brad. Thanks for taking a few minutes. We appreciate it, and best of luck as you continue to deal with this stuff. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you.